enterprise, every government, and essentially any entity around the world, the objective of each of these entities is to be able to do three things. Number one is to be able to deliver service with a good customer experience. Number two is to be able to deliver the service in an efficient manner. And then number three is to deliver that service in a cost-effective manner. So if you look at it, regardless of what angle you look at, whether it's the government, whether it's corporations, whether it's NGOs, everyone essentially wants to do these three things at any given point in time. Now, the idea of digital transformation comes from the fact that we want to be able to use computers and computational power to be able to ensure that our organizations can deliver a really good customer experience to customers, deliver these services as efficiently as possible, and ultimately make sure that we deliver these services as cheaply as we can. So ideally, all these technologies, the idea of all of them now is they all come in to be able to allow organizations to do these three things: to deliver better service, faster and cheaper, whilst also ensuring that we deliver it efficiently.
Okay, what is AI then?
So now, when we now look at what components make this customer experience better, what components make efficiency a realistic objective, what components make this a cheaper endeavor to be able to explore, we then look at the components of digital transformation as a whole. So the different components that we've basically mastered around the world so far, at least, is one, we've been able to digitize a lot of the different processes that we have to make them happen much faster and much cheaper. But in doing this, a lot of the systems that we have today are rule-based. So for example, a lot of the systems that we have today, you'll say, if you submit a form, it will say to you, you didn't fill in the part that has a star on it, for example. But the system can only know what has been programmed. The idea of AI was essentially conceived in the 1950s by this guy called Turing. And the idea was, can we be able to get to a point where computers can be able to essentially simulate human behavior? Or rather, can we be able to equip computers to be able to think, act, and make decisions in a manner that a human being would have been able to do? So essentially, that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to get to a point whereby we can be able to have the computer able to think, able to reason, and able to act and make decisions, on our behalf.
Okay. Now, Botswana as a country, we've got the smart board strategy, which is really an ambitious strategy to digitalize government and the entire country. Corporates have, whatever corporate you go to, there's a digital strategy, 3-year strategy, 5-year strategy. Digitalization appears to be at the core of what corporates are doing. Just from your experience, you consult in Botswana and beyond, just the landscape of what that looks like in Botswana.
No, definitely. Look, I think I will always say this, and by the way, my practice and the work that I do is across the continent. And one thing that I will always say is that Botswana's smart board strategy is probably one of the most ambitious across the continent. And I think for a long time we've always said Botswana can't implement, we struggle to implement and all these things, but we've seen a massive change over the last couple of years. And this massive change that we've seen with the smart board strategy, this was essentially a strategy to say, look, one, let's get all Botswana across the country connected. As we speak right now, you can connect across the country. There's very, very few areas that haven't been connected fully. Majority of our hotels, for example, majority of our hospitals, majority of our clinics, you can access the internet from there. And now that's the bedrock, because there's no digital transformation that is effective without internet connection. That's the first part. Now the second part is now then to say, how do we now then deliver services? Now delivering services in two ways. The first one is that the government being able to deliver services directly to the citizens. And I've been privileged to actually have been working on the One Government, One Citizen platform, which is essentially going to be delivering tons of services to Botswana. And the president actually announced this, I think, sometime last year. And already we're starting to see Botswana able to access various types of services like societies registration online, without needing to queue, without needing to be there. And this is a continual process that's going to happen. It will not happen overnight. The next part of it is now then developers and engineers in an ecosystem now then saying, look, everybody is now connected. Number two, majority of our population, today as we speak, we've got over 1 million people accessing the internet on a daily basis in the country. And all these people, they're accessing Facebook, YouTube, etc. Now what needs to then happen now on the other side of that transformation is the developers in the country, the engineers now coming up to build solutions, applications, sites, platforms that people can now be able to leverage that connection on for them to be able to make their lives easier. And that's now the next part of that transformation that we're looking at and the kind of direction we're moving towards.
Okay, we're moving towards that direction. We're talking about computers being able to mimic a human being. Yep. Now, we'll talk about this in the context of the workplace then. If computers are mimicking me, what happens to me?
Yeah.
Just to break it down, what you have seen thus far, particularly from a local context, from a Botswana context.
Definitely. Look, we've been in the AI business, I think, for the last 6-7 years. And the idea, the governing idea, at least today as we speak, most of the jobs are not really in danger. I'm talking about the technology that we have today. Because a lot of the AI applications that we have, if you look at, for example, platforms like your ChatGPTs, they tend to do what you call hallucinations sometimes. Sometimes hallucination basically is saying, sometimes they can just lie. It just sounds like it's real, but, it can sometimes lie. Number two, for a lot of these applications, right, one-off applications, you will find that these are really applications whereby they're not really at accuracy levels where they can compete with a human being. For example, you look at things like diamond sorting, for example, which is a repetitive task. The top 1% experts in that field are really able to do it much, much better than any AI can today as we speak, at least. So the idea now is, where we are with AI today, the idea is, let's work on augmenting the capabilities of the human being. So if a human being, for example, could be able to sort 10 diamonds in a day, for example, if we introduce AI into it, the idea is for us to be able to allow this person to have the superpowers to be able to do 100, over time. And of course, that will mean that not everybody who's on the floor is going to be needed because there's more augmentation for this individual. The idea then becomes very straightforward to say, look, we then now need to be able to equip these other individuals with skills that they can be able to leverage on so that they can be able to build and work on top of that AI as the base.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. I've had the privilege to attend a conference a couple of months ago for ILS, and this was one of the conversations there. And the worry from a labor perspective was, but is the employer doing enough to capacitate? I mean, we keep talking about upskilling and retooling the workforce, but how does that look like? What is the actual plan to say this is the trajectory? Therefore, whether be it in agriculture, be it in teaching, be it in whatever sector, this is the trajectory. What is the plan to capacitate?
Definitely. And look, this is a very big matter because this matter started even before the advent of AI became more and more popular the last couple of years. This matter, by the way, was a big matter even when we were introducing robotics into factories. It was a big matter when we were starting to automate some internal business processes, to make them more efficient. In that process, quite a number of people already lost, their jobs. And quite frankly, in the, prior industrial revolutions, we didn't really do that great of a job to be able to upskill the people. The challenge that we have now is if AI truly gets to the promised land of what we expect it to become the next couple of years, quite a number of professions and vocations will start to become obsolete because it can be able to be done cheaply and efficiently at scale. So now the plan now, I think, at least from a Botswana perspective, is to say, look, locally what we want to do is we want to be able to start directly from the grassroots, to be able to make sure that within the curriculum, we've got the right kind of skill set that we're teaching the students. So now when we talk about skill set now, right, the idea is not for us to start saying every kid should learn how to code. I personally am not necessarily a big fan of that notion, because the idea is that essentially all this stuff is about problem solving. So the idea is now, changing the curriculum, for example, now to outcome based, where it's more about what a student can be able to get done at the end of the day rather than regurgitating facts. Number two, being able to teach these kids to be able to problem solve, to see a problem, and then be able to apply their mind to say, what is available to me to be able to solve this problem? And that, by the way, is the most important skill that we can be able to impart. So starting off with that essential base, right? And then essentially then going to the next stage, which is, awareness now. Awareness to say what tools are available for you to be able to solve the different types of problems that you have. So once you understand how to problem solve, then now you look at the tools, now you can be able to start to fix and figure these out. Now the next stage now is the people who are in the workforce today, how do we ensure that we're able to get them the right? Because the challenge that we have right now is, in my industry, we've got a big shortage of skills as we speak. So now, how do we take some people whose jobs are potentially, analytical, high rigor, taking these people and then being able to give them the necessary skills for them to be able to either be, creators of some of these solutions, or to be able to allow them to be able to leverage these AI solutions so they can be able to be 10x employees. That's really, the kind of direction that everybody is moving into.
I think it's quite interesting that you talk about the fact that there's a shortage of skill as far as AI and others is concerned. But at the same time, we talk about some jobs becoming obsolete.
Yes.
At the same time. Let's start with the jobs that the trends are saying these are going to be obsolete. Typically, what are the top 10 from experience that we are saying, you know what, in the first 5 to 10 years, these will be different or they'll be totally obsolete?
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to be a prophet of doom today on things that people have done over their lifetimes, but I can give you a criteria that you can always look at. If, one, the job is repetitive, so it's essentially the exact same process that you're looking at. You've got a short-term horizon until this thing particularly changes. You're looking at, for example, in a lot of cases, what digital transformation in the first phase did was it removed the need for a lot of bookkeepers, because your Sage, Pastel, and all these kinds of solutions came in to be able to do a lot of those automatic tasks. Now, that bookkeeping level, it's actually going up now, whereby now it's able to actually analyze the data, analyze the details on what's going on. So repetitive jobs, are pretty much at risk. The second part of the issues, or the jobs that I could say are at risk, are jobs that relatively have a simple learning curve related to them, whereby if you can throw a lot of data to it, you can be able to essentially, get somebody to be able to do the job. So, for example, where it has to do with identification of, different types of phenomenons, that kind of stuff, we're going to start to see it over time starting to be replaced by AI. So it's just a criteria that one can look at.
Okay. Now, let's talk about just the impact that you have seen so far. Earlier on, you gave an example of a project that has been implemented in Botswana. But typically, where have we seen the impact of AI, either from a service perspective or from an industry perspective in the country, and what that has meant in terms of the employees? Because I think quite often when we talk about it, there's a concern that we are going to be replaced by machines, although from industry, like you're saying, it's faster, efficient, and the like.
Yeah, definitely. So you're looking at two sides, like we said. Everything has two sides. I'll look at one very exciting project that's been burgeoning over the last couple of years in the identification of cervical cancer in patients, to allow remote clinics across the country to be able to essentially, without any high cost equipment, to be able to have at least a first level of defense. It's not necessarily diagnosing per se, but rather predicting the likelihood that these people will be, have it, and then escalating those who have a higher prediction to take it to the specialists, thus improving the outcomes of healthcare very quickly. So you can move from an extreme that's very good like that, and then you can move to another extreme on the other side, whereby you're looking at, for example, we've got cases now where call centers are being automated. So essentially, you'd have to say press 1 to press 2, press whatever. Now, that call center service is moving completely away from that kind of model to a more interactive model, whereby AI models are actually on the other side of these calls, being able to pick up these calls, being able to understand what a customer is looking for, and actually being able to autonomously take care of that. So you've got these two very big extremes to say, look, there's a side whereby AI is able to come in and completely change people's lives, because you could never be able to have a specialist at every single hospital across the country, even if we wanted to. On the other side, we're also looking at a situation whereby, all these call center employees who've known that their job is answering calls and, doing something on the system, is essentially disappearing almost overnight. So when you look at these two extremes, right, you then look and you see the direct benefit of these kind of technologies, and then, the direct, I wouldn't say disadvantage per se, or the direct need to start thinking about upskilling would come from.
Now, what do I do now as an employee to position myself for the world of work that is AI driven? What are the opportunities? What do I need to do? We talk about retooling, reskilling, but what does that essentially look like? I'm a student of politics. What do I need to do to continue being relevant in the world of work that's driven by AI?
Definitely. So the one piece of advice that I'm giving everybody today is this. The real truth is AI as we know it cannot essentially, take away your job, right? In a lot of use cases, in a lot of areas, it's not going to take your job today. I'm talking about today's technology. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow morning. However, the person who understands how to leverage and use these different AI tools is going to definitely take the job of the person who cannot. And this is a very important note to understand, to say the one key thing that you can do for yourself as an individual, because a lot of these tools have been made simple to use, have been made accessible, is for you to learn how you can be able to effectively use these tools. Essentially, the way that Excel at some point was, the big skill for everybody to be able to know, you need to be able to know how to use the simple tools and how to maximize them and how to use them within your domain of expertise. And that doesn't need you to learn how to code. That doesn't need you to become a machine learning engineer. All that needs you to do is to essentially sit down and understand how to be able to prompt, on these different tools and how to use them within, your domain of expertise. And that essentially is what can give you the edge, at least with the kind of view that we're looking at today.
I think this technological revolution that we talk about is the first really in history where the global south is not catching up. We are right in the middle and in the midst of the changes that are happening. From a country perspective, what then do we need to do as well to leverage off AI, to leverage off these technologies such that we're able to take advantage of the AFCTA, for example, we're able to take of other opportunities in the country and beyond? Definitely.
Look, I'm a big fan of the work that is currently being done in country, from a government level. Because what the government has done is that the government decided to lead this, digital transformation charge. And the kind of leadership that we're looking at, and particularly I'm talking about organizations that I work with on a daily basis. You look at the kind of work that Botswana Innovation Hub has managed to get done, together with, Botswana Innovation Fund. They've then said, look, this AI revolution is there, it's on the ground. And now we started to see startups coming from the country, startups like Anton Tech using AI, for example, to improve outcomes in agriculture. We started to see, startups coming in from this very same ecosystem as well, like ourselves, whereby we're providing a wide range of these AI solutions. And that kind of grassroots support is essentially what's allowing us to be able now to say, on a base level, we can be able to have solutions that we can use internally in country, and then solutions that we can be able to export. Because you look at these different types of examples, they've been able to actually start to penetrate different countries across the continent. And that kind of base is essentially what we need to double down on.
Earlier on, you touched on kids and the fact that there's this drive to talk about coding.
Yeah.
But besides coding, what else can the young people? We are where we are. You talk about changes in curricula, but what else can we do to encourage our young people to look into these opportunities, to take up some of these opportunities and position themselves for an AI-driven future?
Definitely. Look, the one key thing that everybody needs to invest in is to learn problem solving. Because like I said, it doesn't matter whether it's AI today, whether it's Python or JavaScript, whatever language that is trendy on the day. The idea is going to always be being able to see a problem, break down that problem into different pieces, and then being able to then say, based on what I have around me, how can I solve it? And understanding and truly mastering that skill has to be the very first step that everybody across the country has to be able to figure out, because that's the nexus of what a knowledge-based economy would look like. And so that's the piece of advice that I think I'd put on the table.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tavonga Muchuchute, the Managing Director and a Techpreneur at Xavier Africa, speaking to us about AI, the opportunities that lie in there from a workforce perspective and certainly from a country perspective, and entities that the future is bright. We have to change how we think, and we also have to leverage all of our skills and our knowledge and expertise to ensure that we are able to problem solve such that we are able to become part and parcel of the future that is AI driven.